Love is both a lie and a form of evil. This is the quote from the great Hachiman Hikigaya from the classical masterpiece of anime named Teen Romantic Comedy SNAFU. This is an anime that has been here for quite a long time now. It isn't new. Most of you have probably watched this anime, and that is for a good reason. That is because this anime is one of the best animes out there, from its story and beautifully written characters. It doesn't need the best animation, the best art to portray how good its story is. Yes, it may benefit from better animation, but with a story as good as this, it is enough for me to simply call this a masterpiece. I have watched many stories, many romances of anime, and nothing has quite touched me like my teenage romantic comedy SNAFU. It has all the name, but it completely explains what the story is about and basically the gist of it. A romance comedy about our protagonist Hachiman Hikigaya. Nonetheless, however, this anime in particular is a rare breed. You can clearly see the passion put into the story, into developing it, as well as its characters. The story of this anime starts off quite simple. You see Hachiman Hikigaya giving his dialogue, his quote of the day, Sun Tzu style. Youth is a lie, it is all evil and crap. And that was enough of a hook to me to capture my interest, because I am a big fan of those animes that have a really laid-back protagonist, mainly like Hachiman Hikigaya. Hachiman Hikigaya is basically for me the standard of the MC I'm looking for. And out of the many, and I mean many, main characters of animes out there, none have been quite as real as Hachiman Hikigaya. Because for me, Hachiman Hikigaya is the realest motherfucker around. He won't be saying what should be said morally. No, what he intends to do is say what needs to be said, even if it goes around the moral compass of some others. He won't tiptoe trying to avoid hurting others' feelings just to reach a goal of his. Instead, he says what needs to be said. Instead of doing all that and sugarcoating what he says the harsh truth about things. The blunt edge of someone's thoughts and feelings, that is what he speaks. Like for example, there's a scene in the show where a character runs away from all her problems and responsibilities, and Hachiman Hikigaya is the first one to find this character. Instead of being compassionate and lovey-dovey with this character and telling white lies for them to just do their job, instead Hachiman tells the harsh truth of what she is doing. Instead of saying that your friends need you, come help us. Instead, he says the harsh truth: you are being selfish. This is all for your compassionate gain. You want others to be compassionate for you. That is what Hachiman reveals. He reveals the harsh truth about others' hidden intentions, about their actions. In a situation where others would just tell white lies to get this situation over it, Hachiman instead goes the hard way, sacrificing his overall hierarchy of being looked as being nice and crap to the one being the most real out of all of them, not hiding within a mask and telling what needs to have been said. That is why I feel that Hachiman Hikigaya is one of the most realist main characters out there. And sometimes he's not really the most relatable. He goes cowabunga sometimes with what he does, but that's understandable. That's what he is. He's not supposed to be the most relatable main character out there because he's not a throwaway character. He's not one of those characters to sell you on. Oh my god, Hachiman Hikigaya. No, he's a character from a really well written show. It's like he's his own person. That's just why I really love this show, because Hachiman Hikigaya is an prime example of a really well written character. He goes through many character developments in the story, and it shows. It may not be as fast as an episode or two because it's a process. No one person develops as fast in mere weeks, but Hachiman Hikigaya develops normally in like few months or so in anime time, which just explains just how good this show's character development is and how it's handled generally over the whole show. And with Hachiman being as harsh as he is with his words, only few stay around him, and that is what makes genuine connections. He doesn't wear a mask to berate others into liking him. No, he reveals what he is, and the others that stay or who accepts him. Those are the true genuine people that belong to him, and those that accept him for who he is. True and genuine relations. And speaking of the word genuine, it is one of the main focus about this anime, because around season 2, the anime gets more serious. For season 1, mainly focus about building the characters, setting the theme, the plot, and introducing us to the world and the characters that live in it. It is still all fun and games in season 1, but after season 2, it gets a little bit more serious. The conflicts set up in season 1 start introducing themselves, and now Hachiman and his group need to deal with them. But before we get to that, let me just give you a brief reminder, a quick explanation per se, about the story of My Teenage Romantic Comedy. The storyline basically flows around Hachiman Hikigaya, our protagonist, and he is tasked to join this group, which only currently has one member, and that is Yukinashita, another main character of this anime. And after a while, the group starts to grow, and they are introduced to one more member, Yui. And the group develops over time. They solve problems because the group is mainly a service club which does things to help others that request upon them, and they try all they can. But sometimes the problems just arises to be too difficult. They are backed into a corner, and Hachiman Hikigaya is forced to do what needs to be done. Hachiman Hikigaya has solutions to most of these problems, but in most situations, these solutions aren't the most morally applicable per se. What he does isn't what should be done, it is what needs to be done. He doesn't care about moral things or sugarcoating what he says. What he cares is about solving a problem and moving on. And so because of this, conflict slowly arises in season 2. And it isn't about the problems tasked to Hachiman, Yui, and Yukinashita. It's mainly about their group. When the term genuine was thrown, their group starts to crumble apart. They start to drift away from each other. And of course, Hachiman and Yui doesn't really want this. But with Hachiman being what he is, a realist, he lets it flow. And from a normal anime, you would expect this conflict to end in a mere episode or two, or in that same episode where they start to drift away each other and plot of friendship start to arise. But that isn't the case here, because Hachiman and Yukinashita are both stubborn. They are lonesome people, and of course, they would rather be alone than to fix the problem that arises from their group slowly splitting apart. And not only that, another conflict arises from another term getting thrown around, codependency. This arises when Yukinashita's sister noticed that Yukinashita has been too reliant on Hachiman, and Hachiman and Yukinashita both were relying too much on Yui, which is a fair point. That's why the problems of their group became more prevalent. But after a while, some rough patches have been put in place on the wounds of this group. But that wasn't enough to completely heal the wound that they bleed from, as the problem of genuinity and codependency still remain, as most problems offered on the service club that Yukinashita and Hachiman are in are mostly solved by Hachiman, and his devious ways of solving such problems, immoral even in some cases. That is how deep the story of My Teenage Romantic Comedy is. It is one of the most realist and most personally touching animes out there, because it is one of the animes out there that I can personally relate on, and a whole bunch of others as well. Most animes don't cover this, because most animes aren't able to replicate how real the story feels in my teenage romantic comedy, which is why I feel that this show is a masterpiece in its own right, just from its story alone. It doesn't need a good budget for great animation like Jujutsu Kaisen, Sousha no Frieren, Mushoku Tensei, or any show like that. What it needs is only a story engaging enough for many others like me to feel personally touched by it. But how about the romance aspects of this anime? I mean, this is a romance anime, right? Well, this show mainly revolves around the romance, or particularly the love triangle between Hachiman, Yukinoshita, and Yui, because Yui has for a while been in love with Hachiman, and she hasn't admitted it yet, but it is very well implied in the story that she does. And Yukinoshita, on the other hand, doesn't want to admit it, but she starts to develop feelings for Hachiman as well. Feelings going beyond mere friendship. But being as lonesome and stubborn as Hachiman Hikigaya is, and she herself, she doesn't want to admit that. Thus, another conflict arises in their group. The conflict of a love quarrel in some cases. Yukinoshita doesn't want to hurt Yui, even more proven when she wished on Hachiman to fulfill the wish of Yui. Plus, an awkward tension arose from the group, which in time with all the other conflicts slowly made them drift apart. But after a while, and I mean a long while that it took, probably 2 seasons for Hachiman, he finally made a move. My boy Hachiman became a Chad. He became a real man. He said what he wanted and he did what he needed for what he wanted. He finally expressed what he felt. And of course, in the most vaguest way possible, that some viewers, including me, even got confused by it until a few episodes later where it finally gets cleared up. Only being cleared up to me by others around him joking around if he was girlfriend and boyfriend with Yukinoshita. Like, bruh. But yeah, that's about it. I know that there is some faults on this anime. This isn't perfect. There are some problems to the story that make it not to be perfect, like some story lines and sometimes the plot being just so confusing because of Hachiman and Yukinoshita being so vague. Sometimes this show just makes me feel like a little boy that is between like 2 experts in some random field in science that are quarreling about some very complicated subject, and I'm just here like watching how this goes and see if anything they say I understand, which is what I feel in some cases in this anime. But it doesn't mean that it isn't still a masterpiece to me, because this show really just touched me in a personal level, and no anime character out there or main protagonist can be as real and as great as Hachiman Hikigaya. And that's about it for my tribute to my teenage romantic comedy SNAFU, or Oregairu for short. Thank you.
君の横顔が見つめているのは次の季節